Okay, we can start.
Thank you, Sean. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of Conway County Borough Council Cabinet on this Tuesday afternoon, overcast in Abergele. A few items before we move into the agenda. The first is to remind us all that we are being live streamed today. So if you do need to move away from your computer for any reason, please remember to turn your camera off and remain on mute. If you'd like to make any comments or questions, I'll be keeping an eye on the blue raised hand that the Zoom function allows us to have, so please try and use that if possible. And finally, really welcome anybody speaking in either English or Welsh today, so please remember to choose your translation of choice at the bottom of your Zoom screen if that's required today, please, as well. Onto the agenda then. The first item is apologies for absence. Any apologies, Sean?
Yes, I've received one apology from Jane Richardson, the Strategic Director of Economy and Place.
Okay, thank you very much. Item 2 is declarations of interest, to remind us all to declare the existence and nature of any personal interest. Is there anything that anybody needs to declare at this stage? No, okay. Please remember to do so during the meeting if something crops up. Thank you. The third is urgent matters. There's no urgent matters today. Fourth is minutes of the Cabinet, page 4 to 12 from when we last met. Would someone like to move those as a correct record, please? Councillor Charlie, Emma, all in favour, please show your hands. That's great, thank you very much. 5 is announcements. Just brief items from me today. The usual update in terms of the COVID-19 figures for us here in Conway. When we last met 2 weeks ago, the number was 91.2 per 100,000. The number report in today's report shows that to be 61.4 per 100,000. So quite a drop from 2 weeks ago. We are aware, however, that today's report shows Conway has a number of new cases, and that may affect that reduction we have been seeing of recent times. Just for assurances for members, we are aware of that increase. It's within a contained setting, and it's being supported and managed in the right way. So it's not necessarily reflective of the wider community cases of COVID-19 at this point in time. So just for awareness, if you see some of those numbers being slightly higher today and tomorrow. Also in relation to COVID, this Friday we'll hear the latest position from the First Minister and Welsh Government in regard to their 3-weekly review. So that may the announcements that come from the First Minister and Welsh Government may affect some of the services that we provide. So of course, as council, we will respond to whatever those announcements will be, and make sure that the services that are affected are responding to those as well, as soon as we have that clarity from the Welsh Government. As close to Fridays as possible. Hopefully, as soon as announcements are made, we get the detail as to what they actually mean. That'd be really good. So that's it from me in terms of brief announcements. You and Chief Executive, anything from you?
Thanks, Leader. Gosh, those three weekly reviews come around very quickly, don't they? It feels like only a week or so. Anyway. I'd just like to give a brief update on where we are in our recruitment process for the post of Strategic Director, Finance and Resources. Members will recall that we went back out to advert with a closing date of last Thursday, 4th of March. We had additional applications in. The Senior Employment Committee met this morning and have shortlisted candidates to be interviewed by the Strategic Leadership Team this coming Friday, the 12th, and then by the Senior Employment Committee itself on Monday, the 15th, with a view to hopefully being able to make a positive recommendation to council on the 19th of March. So we're going at a decent pace in order to try and secure the finest candidate for Conway. Thank you, Leader.
Great, thank you, Yuan. Looking forward to that process, hopefully coming to an end sooner rather than later. I did omit actually to share that, of course, on Monday, we're looking forward to our schools welcoming back the remaining learners in primary schools, that is. So yeah, looking forward to that. I'm sure many parents are, as I'm sure the children themselves are as well. My remaining one at home is certainly looking forward to it on Monday. Okay, back onto the agenda. 7 is the forward work programme for us to review. Is there any comments on the forward work programme from anybody, please? No, I can't see anything there, so thank you. We'll note the forward work programme. Thank you for that. Item 8 is the education portfolio, and it's from Councillor Julie. The social inclusion review, page 40 through to 105. Over to you, please, Julie.
Great, thank you, Leader. Yes, really positive to have this in front of us today. I'll go through a little summary and then touch on some key points. So the report was commissioned in 2017 and I identified key areas for development for social inclusion in order to improve performance. Social inclusion project commenced in 2018 with key stakeholder representation to strategically direct key areas of work identified. Substantial progress has been made against all 5 work streams, which I'll go into a little bit further in a minute, with completion in many areas and long-term plans against remaining areas. Following appointment of new positions within the management structure, current operational parameters for the service show sustained improvement working within clear structures, and the service is now strategically coherent with ongoing next stages for development focusing on operational level improvement. So improved crew provision and enhanced process of allocating places. Obviously, that's really important in this change, really. In the past, we'd often hear of pupils who would find their way to the PRU and perhaps not find their way back. So that's been a really big part of it. A better understanding of and shared commitment to social inclusion in Conway. So this is a development of a clear pathway of involvement for both learners and schools to inclusive learning has assisted in the wider developments within the service, so that it's very clear what the expectations are within the school from the staff and from the pupils who need to access this provision. Meaningful and consistent maximisation of school-based resources through clearer policies and frameworks and guidance. So that makes it easier for schools to work out the pupils perhaps who may be beginning on the journey towards possible need for referral, and they have better policies in place to help to deal with that. And that access to advice and support from the inclusion service has supported schools in being able to engage in this more organised tiered system effectively. All 3 PRU sites are now strategically and operationally organised under Carnarvon Addisc Conway as a portfolio PRU. So although they're in 3 separate places, we now have them under one head teacher, and it's classed as one provision, which is really positive and helpful for staff to appreciate what's happening. The appointment of a new service manager for the social inclusion was appointed in December 2018. That's Hannah Morris, who I know you've all met, and she's doing an absolutely fantastic job. And this, the report was able to inform the changes really that needed to be made, and Hannah's worked incredibly hard to make that happen. She has, even though we've had COVID in the last 12 months, worked hard to appoint a senior leadership team within the pupil referral provision, headed up by Gwyn Owen as the new head teacher, who's doing a fantastic job of liaising with our schools and with the service. So very positive change there. There are 5 work streams. They were identified within the project, and they continue to remain a steer for the future direction of the service. They clearly identify areas that are key for service delivery, and I'll just touch on those. So work stream 1 is to establish clear strategic oversight of pupil referral unit leadership. So obviously that's been completed with the new structure there from the head teacher and the SLT within the schools. Work stream 2 was the improve service performance, so standards and performance and effectiveness framework. So as part of that, they've developed an approach for external validation of the quality of teaching and learning and the effectiveness of social inclusion provision within Conway. And there's a number of points there which I won't go through point by point, because I'm sure you've had an opportunity to read the report. Workstream 3, review and develop the social inclusion moderation panel and associated processes. So that's very important in ensuring that there's a consistency for the pupils who are accessing the pupil referral unit, which in the past may not have been quite the case, but going forward, there's a clear set of terms of reference for schools to understand what the access criteria is, whether that's at key stage 2, 3 or 4, and the clear and published criteria and guidance and standards for referrals, so that can be accessed by staff within mainstream schools and by pupils and families as well. And then workstream 4 and 5 is to development the on-site inclusion centres in Conway, the OSICs, and develop and implement performance management framework across in Conway. So that's about working within our schools. So as we move forward, we'll see perhaps some of those pupils who may have been referred to the pupil referral unit will remain within the schools and within the provision that's there with the support of the service, be that the head teacher and Hannah Morris and her team working with schools to help to make that happen. And I think what's really important as well is that the change of the PRU, in terms of historically, you'd often see pupils would be referred to the PRU and perhaps that would be where they'd stay, that would be their destination. With this, there's very much a dual responsibility for pupils. That's one of the big changes, where we have pupils that are in the PRU, but they're still associated with the mainstream school that they've attended. And looking forward, the hope is that those students will end up back in their mainstream school, and also the plans are for opportunities for perhaps respite places, so that pupils who are struggling, whether that's behavioural or social issues, could attend the PRU and then go back to their mainstream school as well. So lots of really positive changes happening, and this is just a massive credit to Hannah Morris and to Dr. Lodi Brown as well, who still holds overall responsibility, but Hannah even stepped in as acting head teacher over this period of time as well, until we were able to appoint a permanent head, like I said, with Gwyn Owen. So yeah, really positive changes in the service, and there's nothing for you to decide today. This is purely for you to see the progress that's being made within the service. So yeah, I propose that we let me go back to the recommendation. Review the progress made of social inclusion. So there isn't really a recommendation as such, but yeah, if there are any questions, then we've got Lodi with us this afternoon, and Hannah Morris is here as well. Thanks, Leader.
Lovely, thank you, Julie. A couple of bits I want to pick up as well, but let's bring others in first. So we've got Councillor Charlie first and Councillor Emma. Over to you, Charlie.
Thanks, Leader. Thanks, Julie. Yeah, I really welcome this. We know any organisation working in isolation is going to struggle to know where they're at to improve. So good communication with all the stakeholders is really key. I particularly welcome the recommendation that each school has a governor responsible for the pupils that are in the PRU from their own school. So there's a bit of oversight there. Two specific questions. We have a management committee looks after the PRUs, not a governing body. So why not a governing body, and what's the makeup of the managing committee? So that's the first question.
Am I able to answer there, Chair? Is that okay? So the guidance from the Welsh Government around PRUs dictates that they have a management committee rather than a governing body. So this is Welsh Government directed, so we're not unique in that all PRUs across Wales have that as their form of management. The subtle difference between the two is that financial elements aren't discussed with the governing body like they would in a school. That doesn't translate over to a management committee. And they also can't make judgment around the curriculum either. Those are two areas that are noted in the guidance. They're not Conway identified notes. The makeup of the committee forms interested parties. So you have what's called community representation, local authority representation, parental representation, and you can add in business. In Conway, we haven't added in business representation, as that's not a statutory requirement to do so. So in terms of representation from community, head teachers from local schools are present. Indeed, the chair at present is the deputy head from Ysgol is our current management committee chair. There are other heads on the panel from both secondary and primary, along with local authority staff, such as myself, but also safeguarding, youth justice, and a representation from social care alongside that as well. So it's interested parties, if I was to put it more loosely, into the needs of the children that are within the PRU service. And then alongside that, there is parental representation. We've been very lucky that we have got parental representation. This has always been historically an area that PRUs have struggled with on their management committee, and then staff representation alongside that. So a very similar makeup to a governing body, just with subtle differences in terms of meeting the needs of the children.
Thanks, Anne. Charlie, is that clear for you? Is that you comfortable with that?
Yeah, I did have another question, Sam, if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
So yeah, it is interesting, but I think the financials of this are really, really important because we're obviously looking for schools to buy in with SLAs and stuff. So, and we're asking governors to get involved. So I just find it strange that there isn't a sort of governor's body like anything else. If it's good enough for other schools, I don't see why it shouldn't be a suitable model for PRUs. But I was just really always interested to see what other authorities are doing. From page 99 on, it gives some costings for other authorities. So we've got such a massive range. Monmouthshire spends just over £8,000 per pupil. Powys is £64,000 per pupil. I know we're kind of mid-table around the 20k mark, but do we know what's been supplied in Powys for £64,000 and maybe what's not being supplied in Monmouthshire for £8,400? Because it's just such a massive range of costings. Thank you.
Yes. Am I able to answer there? Yeah. Okay. I won't pretend to know the details in terms of the actual provision that's on site for those local authorities. I know there is a great difference in the way that it's provided based on the locality and the range. In terms of Powys as an area, it is of course more sparse in terms of its delivery, so whether that relates to the amount per pupil. What I can note is that across North Wales, in terms of our costings, we use a similar model in terms of where we have learners transitioning across the North Wales authorities. The costing for a PRU place remains quite stable. I don't know from the data whether items such as home tuition and foundation fees have been included within that data. For us, around the, as you say, around the 20,000 mark for our places. That is for PRU places only, and that serves 95 places across Key Stage 2, 3 and 4. So it doesn't include any home tuition or indeed our foundation phase learners in the resource base. But yes, there is a very much divergence, isn't there, across the range that is presented. I think it would be useful to look at what those higher end costs are. Certainly the lower end costs I know have less provision and smaller provision compared to what we are offering here. But if members would like more detailed oversight of those, I'm more than happy to make reference with colleagues in other local authorities. I know the North Wales one's quite in depth, of course, because they're our neighbouring colleagues, and we did some work with Swansea more recently in terms of their provision, because they use a very similar model to ourselves. So when we were going through our remodelling process, we did look at their modelling and makeup in terms of entrance and exit and overall planning around learners entering.
Okay, thanks, Hannah. That's useful. Charlie, did anything further you want to come on with that? No, you're happy there. All right, thanks. Okay, thanks. Councillor Emma and Cheryl.
Thanks, Leader. Thanks, Julie, for taking us through that report. It's really positive to see that coming through. I just wanted to pick up on something that you mentioned that I was already interested in, actually, and that was Workstream 2, the Proof Service Performance. It was particularly about the approach for external validation of the quality of teaching and learning within that provision. Can I ask, is it GWARE, Estin, or is it some other form of validation and moderation that we're looking at, please?
Am I okay to answer? Yeah, okay. So it's all of those in answer to your question. So we have a GWARE PRU lead who's the same lead across all the North Wales PRU. So there's a consistency and a specialism within that approach. The lead is from a PRU in North Wales himself, so has that background and provides us with the general challenge and steer. That would sit alongside also the management committee and their challenge on performance and performance data, along with Estin. PRUs are inspected akin to schools, a slightly different inspection framework in terms of what is looked at by the inspectors, because of course they're looking at the journey of some of our learners have made in connection to their difficulties and the reason for being placed. So the inspection framework is similar in terms of outside performance management and oversight. Internally, the PRU has a school development plan, so we're subject to the same planning that the school site would have, and indeed teaching standards remain the same. You know, the standards that would be expected of mainstream staff remain the teaching standards that we would go by in relation to demarcating out our own staff. Performance management and data is a new model that we've put in. You know, historically the model has not been embedded within the practice, so there is now a very clear performance management for staff for the service and how we measure staff performance from a very ground level in terms of what goes on in the classroom, from observations, book scrutiny, learning walks, right through to data scrutiny, destinations for our learners, length of stay within the PRU, engagement levels. Certainly at the minute we're looking at engagement levels during the offer, during the school closure, because of course we've remained open and some of our learners have taken that offer off and some haven't. So it's obviously cyclical in terms of the learner, but there is a clear cycle in place, both in-house and externally, in terms of oversight and scrutiny.
Okay, Emma, is anything further you wanted to pick up on that?
No, nothing further. Thank you, Hannah. I really appreciate that. That's really useful.
Great, thank you. And Councillor Cheryl?
Yeah, thank you. Just to say how much I welcome this report and all the work that sits behind it. I know from my many long years of association with the unit at Penrose Avenue, which happens to be in my ward, and acting as a virtual governor there for many, many years, the absolutely outstanding work that they do, and some of the best days I've had as a councillor has been at the ROA days for these young pupils. Absolutely fantastic. If it hasn't already been seconded, I'd like to second it and to thank all concerned.
Great, thank you, Cheryl. I think it'll be good, as you've ended on a thanks there, Cheryl, to perhaps include that as a part of an official recommendation to thank the team and the team on the ground at the school sites as well. If you and Julie are happy to include that, I'm sure you will be.
Yes, very
great.
happy.
Great. So Julie, do you want to just come back, and I've got a couple of points to pick up as well?
Yeah, just absolutely happy to echo Cheryl's thanks there. Massively deserved. As Hannah said, the PRUs have remained open throughout the pandemic. And that's just why I wanted to come back in, really, and just say actually the attendance figures have been really good, considering their friendship circles, their friends are not accessing their mainstream school sites, but the attendance has remained good, which speaks volumes about the provision and where it's at currently, that these pupils have still felt that it was the best place for them to be. So I just wanted to say that really, and just to comment on the feedback that I've had from head teachers and from staff within schools, just how positive it is, both with Hannah and with Gwyn as the head teacher of the PRU as well, has been really positive. I know, Bleeder, you've heard that as well in some of the meetings we've been in, certainly the strategic heads meeting. But I just wanted to let the Cabinet members know that it has been incredibly positive, and I feel that we're in probably the best place that we've been, certainly in the years that I've been a councillor here in Conway. So yeah, absolutely echo thanks to everybody, Hannah, Lodi, and all the team within the PRUs as well. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Julie. So a couple of bits from my side. I think Councillor Charlie probably picked up some of the thoughts I had in terms of the finances around this, and I noted within the report that costs pressures are likely to increase as well. So just understanding perhaps at a later date that a little further, and to make sure that what it is we're providing, yes, of course, is certainly in the best interest of the children, but also making sure we're doing it at the right price as well, to ensure fair and value for money, I suppose. So that's just something to note, which I think Councillor Charlie's already picked up. But I was interested going through the report on the sort of main findings section from the original sort of 2017 report, and wasn't necessarily a comfortable read from back then. Obviously, it's good to see all that progress, but perhaps a concern would be, or a risk could be, is returning back to some of those issues in the future. So I was just wondering whether it's from Hannah or from somebody else, I don't mind who, are we confident that the measures being put in place will not allow a return back to some of the issues that were raised? I'm looking at pages 60 of our report pack and 61, 62, I think it is. The findings that were listed there, are the measures we put in place now, will they prevent us returning back to some of the issues that were in place then?
I'll answer very quickly. Yes, I hope we never return to that place as a service after the work that's been put in. What I would say is what we've looked at is not just a strategic. It's very easy just for me to roll out a strategic piece of paper saying this is what the new structure is, what it's going to be. We've looked at inclusion as an ethos, and just not a thing that we do. It is a thing that is part of all schools and children's, and an approach. It's an approach that the staff live and breathe, and they have a vision that we are working towards and continue to work towards that vision. And the vision, although we have a lovely motto, the vision from me as their manager is these learners deserve nothing but the best, and we will strive to be sector leading, because sector leading is the only position that the PRU should be in. And that is the message that all staff work towards. The journey that the children have had to come to us is often difficult, emotional for both the child and the parent, and it is our duty to make sure that the system doesn't let them down any further and gives them an outstanding education that recognises their needs and allows them to flourish and succeed during their time in Conway. The structure is there, that will stand the test of time now. The management committee there, the buy-in is there. And I think that the buy-in, not just from my staff and the staff in Canolfan Addis Conway, the schools that support us, because this work hasn't been done in isolation. The ongoing work with secondary schools is not done in isolation. And that's people who share the vision to ensure that children are included and have inclusive education. So I would happily, comfortably say that what was written in that report will stay in that report, and that the vision going forward does not contain words that are in that report.
Great, thank you, Hannah. I'm just seeing a note from Dr. Lurie as well. Our recent Eston thematic review recognised the sustainable model that we're now in place and was highly commended. So that's really good to see, because what we don't want, and being assured today, is loads of great work, throw loads of time and energy at something, then sadly to slip into old habits. So I'm pleased that there's a sustainable way of dealing with things. And I've got to say, just on a personal level, it's been really good to spend time with Gwyn as the head teacher of Improves in recent months, as Julie mentioned, in our regular catch-ups with some of the head teacher representatives, and very much just one of the representatives of head teachers, not a kind of out of sight, out of mind service in any way at all, an integral part of what we do in supporting our children in their education. So, and that's been really welcome through this. Okay, so let's go back to that recommendation which Councillor Julie moved. Before I do this, Julie, anything further you want to add, or should we move on to the vote?
No, I'm happy with.
Great, thanks. So the recommendation was for us that we review the progress made with the social inclusion. I believe that Julie also proposed in there, and seconded by Cheryl, that thanks be extended to the education team involved in this and the schools themselves, including head teacher and teams. So that'll be included within the recommendation. So that's proposed and seconded. All in favour, please. Excellent stuff. Great. Thank you, Hannah. You're more than welcome to stay, but you may not want to. That's fine. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Laurie, as well, for your efforts on this, and you're here somewhere in the meeting. I can't see you, but appreciate that as well. Item 9 then is the joint Conway and Denbighshire Adoption Panel Annual Report 1920 from Councillor Cheryl as the Children, Families and Safeguarding Portfolio holder. Over to you, please, Cheryl.
Okay, thank you very much, Leader. This report is to provide members with information about the activity of the joint Conway and Denbighshire Adoption Panel between April 19 and March 20, and to note the developments within the regional adoption service during the period of the report. Reference is made within the National Adoption Service Annual Report 1920, which you have at Appendix 1, and the NWAS Report and Quality and Care Review 1920, which you've got at Appendix 2. The report provides information linked to the panel activity, which includes the numbers of children in Conway placed for adoption, those awaiting adoption by the end of the reporting period, and the numbers of children placed with adopters through NWAS service. It also outlines the financial and the practical implications when children are placed outside of North Wales. It's a really full and detailed report. It gives a regional context, a local context. It went to scrutiny, exceptionally well received, a lot of questions, unanimous support. Anne is here to answer any detailed questions you may have, but just to say I'm really looking forward to an improvement in the figures for the next reporting period, with the additional capacity we've got in the North Wales Adoption Service, even though that period is going to obviously span the entire COVID period. And I'm passionate about attracting more foster carers, more adopters. I'm looking forward to opening up our services where we have meet and greet and events to attract more people to come in for our children. So I'm really looking forward to that. Again, I will remind you all of the importance of this, what we do, the great importance of this this report, this service. It's one of the most important things we do. And just to say that I will continue to bring this report to us every 12 months to make sure we're always acting in the best interests of our children in Conway. So I'll just take you then, if there are no questions, I'll take you to recommendations 3.1 and 3.2, and the report is for noting only. And as I say, Anne's here to answer any questions. So thank you, everyone.
Great, thank you, Cheryl. Councillor Charlie wants to go in. Charlie.
Thanks, Leader. Thanks, Cheryl. Really encouraging to see all this good work that's carried on, despite the fact we've been in the pandemic for the last 12 years, it seems like. So huge congratulations to all the team. Just I remember vaguely from my scrutiny days that the 31k payment that's made to outside agencies, it used to be paid in instalments, and then Welsh Government decided it had to be paid up front. And there was a concern then that if there were a breakdown in placements, then obviously that money would be lost, and perhaps there'd be less effort put into ensuring the placements were carried on because they'd already been paid, essentially. Is there any evidence that that's the case? Because it was a concern of mine at the time.
Anne, are you or Kate able to give a more detailed answer to Councillor Charlie on that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's Kate Devonport here. So in respect of that, Councillor Charlie, yes, it absolutely was a concern. I mean, thankfully, it hasn't arisen as an issue. A great deal of effort goes into the matching process, and then obviously the level of support that our case holding social workers can offer during that transition and settling in period makes it a huge difference. So at this point in time, we've not been in a position where we've lost any of the fee that was payable. But if we did come to that point, then we would want to make sure clearly that we pursued any outstanding amounts of money that were due back to the local authority. But happily, as I say, in terms of our placements, we're pushing really hard to keep children local and in Wales. Where that's not in their best interest or it's not feasible, then we're making sure that we really front load that work, the transition planning, the knowledge that's shared with potential adopters, especially the medical information and any complexities that our children have, so that by the time a placement is made, it's made with confidence and we can support that competently.
Okay, thank you, Kate. Charlie?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Kate for her answer. It's not like me to worry about things unnecessarily, Sam. But yeah, no, it's some really, really excellent work there, and it's great to see. So thank you all.
Great.
Thanks for that, Charlie. Really important. Yeah, and just to reassure members that the work of the Conway and Denbighshire adoption panel has gone ahead. We haven't had to cancel any meetings. We've all wrestled with Zoom from varying parts of the area, and we have worked exceptionally hard and overcome all the challenges. And I'm exceptionally confident, as Kate says, in the quality of the reports and the very detailed reports around our children, and the medical and the legal advice that we get from our professional officers. And yeah, it's carried on. We haven't let anything get in the way, not even COVID. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Cheryl. Anybody else got any comments or questions on the report at all? No, so I think it's just from my reflections on yesterday morning. I attended as much as I could the corporate parenting team meeting, which the chief executive chairs, and it's always a useful reminder of some of the very important people that we're supporting as a council in terms of our role as corporate parents for children who are in care. And I think this report again highlights probably one of the, if not the most significant areas of work that a local authority has to do in conjunction with the legal services in terms of supporting children into a family and a household, which is going to help bring them up in a really good way. And so yeah, it's always good to have these reports as a reminder of what really matters in a lot of the work that we do as a council. And actually, from a council taxpayer's point of view, the difference that what it is we are asking them to pay, or telling them to pay, should I say, makes to children's lives, and some very children who certainly need our support. Could I just ask a question? So this is, as you said, a report 1920. Clearly, last 12 months has been very different. Would we expect to see more children, because my understanding is that more children are needing support as a result of the pandemic? would we expect that to filter through to more children potentially needing adoption as well?
Just in respect of that, Councillor Sam, it's too early to tell, quite frankly, because the impact of COVID, obviously, on members of society, on our vulnerable mothers that are having children and their partners, are really significant. So our focus really is looking at that early intervention and prevention. So if we can put support in to help offset the impact of COVID, then that is absolutely what we want to do. So we wouldn't anticipate COVID in itself and the difficulties that have arisen there as being a cause for more adoptive placements, but definitely in terms of more support that's needed to families, to children, and to their parents. So I imagine that if there were any difficulties that arose within the COVID period for families that might lead to adoption, we'll be working very hard to prevent that. It really is the very last course of action we would want to take. So that may then play itself out in the next 6 months when the assessment work is completed, when the support packages have been delivered. But as I say, in terms of adoption as a plan for permanency, we would really want to exclude all other family, friend support networks before we got to that point. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks, Kate. Cheryl?
Thank you for that, Kate. And you know, just to add in there that our work on the project that is Meadow Lodge is going to have in the future, and hopefully a massive impact on the number of children. You know, the assessment, the early intervention, that is all going to hopefully have the correct and desired effect on our children. So thank you.
Thanks. We'll move to recommendations. Just again, perhaps a final comment from me. I have a very, very close member of my family who is a member of my family because they're adopted, and I'd just encourage anybody who would see this as a route that they may be able to support in, to get in touch with our adoption services or children's services team here in Conway, and maybe I'll start a process with you. Because it is truly a life-changing opportunity for some of our young people. So the recommendation, Cheryl, there is for us to note the report, is that right?
Yes, it is. Recommendations 3.1, 3.2 to note. Yeah, thank you.
Great. And somebody able to second that, please? Councillor Gronwy, all in favour then, please? Lovely, thank you very much. Okay, so let's move on. Thank you, Kate, for your attendance today as well. Appreciate that. Item 10, from the Governance and Performance Portfolio, Councillor Chris, this is the 2021 mid-year corporate performance report for the corporate plan 17 to 22. Over to you, please, Chris.
Yeah, good afternoon. Yes, we have our corporate objectives, as you know, set out in the 2017 2022 corporate plan. So this report is about the progress made in what has been, it's been the COVID-19 emergency period, April to September 2020, a period full of emergency response with redeployment of a lot of our services to assist with the pandemic pressures. Already the COVID-19 response work has been reported in our annual report 1920 and has been audited by Audit Wales. Can I just add at this point the full council resolution that was passed in October, and I think it's worth quoting that in full, and that said that in the light of the additional pressures faced by the workforce as a consequence of COVID-19, and in order to support the authority's highly trained and valued workforce, it is accepted that some items of business or activity will be deferred until the pressure of the pandemic has eased. This report actually shows that we definitely haven't stood still in the pandemic period. Going through Appendix 1, I find it's very reassuring to see the traffic light notation showing so much green on our priority and other actions. can I draw your attention to 3.8 of the report, which highlights some of our successes, and fellow cabinet members may wish to elaborate on some of these achievements, but I'd like to mention a few. I mean, crucially, we've paid out about 60 million in pandemic-related grants on behalf of Welsh Government and our residents and businesses. This has been vital for them. Also, if I can point out that Conwy has reused, recycled or composted 73% of waste, which is the highest on record, a real achievement in an emergency period. I mean, this is with ERF teams having to abide by the new safety protocols and work through more than one COVID-19 lockdown period. It shows we are serious about our climate change programme, our decarbonisation plan, and we're heading towards achieving net carbon zero by 2030. So that's all gone on in a very difficult period. We are also one of 2 authorities which have been selected by Welsh Government to produce a local energy plan, another feather in our cap. If I can draw your attention to the Renewal Programme Board, which is up and running, and that is overseeing the service renewal project so that our frontline services can be safely reopened, and also the Workwise 2020 initiatives so our staff can return to the office if appropriate. But this also includes looking at a completely new framework of how and where we work post the pandemic emergency. 3.9 lists our awards that we've attained, and I pick one out here, our family support model, which includes our 5 family centres, was a finalist in the accolades in the Building Bright Futures with Children and Families category. The pandemic has put all sorts of new stresses on families, as Cheryl often elaborates on, and I'm glad that this is really one of our strengths. However, we have areas of improvement. Councillor Julie may wish to elaborate, but obviously the needs of learners during and following the various school closure periods have to be addressed and supported. Our coastal defence strategies need to move forward. Recently we had good news about the old Colwyn Sea defences, but work continues to maximise the funding from Welsh Government and tackle what is a key corporate risk. Lockdown restrictions have reduced the flood awareness events in the rural areas that we were going to have in scrutiny in the finance and resources scrutiny. I know Llanfair TH and Llanrwst were mentioned by the local members. So in essence, the actions we've put on hold will need to be reevaluated, and we need to look at the positive side effects of the pandemic emergency as well. My ward has benefited from active travel schemes, and we want more cycling to continue, and we want the reduction in car travel not to evaporate. So unfortunately, during the period with the pressure on our services, the service performance reviews have been impossible. However, and Fran can confirm this, diary invites have gone out for June and July, so we're hoping to get these up and running again. This report therefore has been developed by each priority lead, providing an update on progress. Accuracy has been checked by the Chief Exec and strategic directors and the head of service. So it's also been to scrutiny, which gave its approval. So I'd like to commend the midterm report to Cabinet for approval, which is the recommendation on page 198. I'd like to add we can be proud of how our team Conwy has responded to the emergency. Specific thanks go to Fran Lewis and her team for their drive in getting this report together so effectively. And just before I finish, can I make a pointed plea to all fellow councillors to complete the Workwise 2020 follow-up councillor survey. Sian Williams has sent us all the links, so if you'd like to spend some time filling that in, we had a 67% response rate last time. See if we can get it even higher this time. So as I say, the recommendation is on page 198.
Hey, Chris, thanks for walking us through that. I'm sure we'd all like to complete that survey. No problem. Julie, and then Mark, and Greg.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Chris, for going through that with us. It really is amazing, isn't it, when you look at, as Chris touched on there, page 200, the successes and the long list of successes that have happened in spite of the fact that that everybody's been dealing with COVID alongside that is just, I mean, it really is absolutely amazing. I was just going to touch a little bit on schools. Obviously, we're not in a position that we're usually in. We can't see examination results in the way that we would normally do. So it's hard to measure in the way we have done historically. But I just wanted to point out some of the positives really that are still there, and an awful lot of work that has gone on this year. When you look at the number of free school meal pupils who've had direct payments, I mean, that took a great deal of work from Andrew's team and the education department. The risk assessments and the support that schools have had in completing those risk assessments, again from another department, from the environmental health department within the local authority. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. The food parcels that have been delivered to some of our more vulnerable families and they've been taken out. The cross work between social care and education has been absolutely phenomenal over this period of time, in particular with our vulnerable learners, some of who have been attending school, and then others we've had the catch up where they've had a named person within the school and a named person within social care as well who have been supporting our more vulnerable families. So I just felt, whilst we can't perhaps look at things in the way that we usually do because we don't have the measures, I just wanted to highlight some of the great work. And the ESDIN thematic review was incredibly positive about Conway and the education department and the work that's gone on this last year. So yes, there's definitely a lot of work for schools to do to ensure that our pupils have the opportunity to the catch-up's not the right word, we don't want to use the word catch-up, but to come back and be able to engage in a positive way with their education again. And that will happen. And our staff within our schools and in our education department really are fantastic and care so much for the young people. But I just wanted to highlight a lot of the good work that's been going on this last year that has meant that when we've had the opportunities to have our schools open, that pupils have been able to come in because of that joint effort by everybody across all those departments. So yeah, I just wanted to highlight that really and say, I guess it's going to take us a couple of years before we can go back to being able to assess by looking year on year, because there's been such a massive change, hasn't there? But we'll find a way of what that should look like going forward. But yeah, thank you, Leader.
Yeah, lovely. Thanks, Julie. Councillor Mark.
Hello, I'm just going to go off camera because my internet's not very good. So I just wanted to bring your attention to the section on the libraries in particular, which is outcome number 7. So in the report pack, it's on page 229. I think it's just really important that, again, we realise how libraries have been able to adapt to the pandemic. We have been doing lots of innovative things such as the call and collect service, and we've adapted as and when legislation has changed with opening and closing. Also, I was very encouraged to see the figures up to the 21st of March of 2020 for the Culture Centre, that we had just over 17,000 people visiting in the months that we were open. That's great. And it shows that the libraries are a very important part of people's lives within the county. And I just want to pass my thanks on to all the team for what they've been doing during the pandemic. So thank you very much. And thanks to Chris for presenting such a good report. So thanks.
Great, thank you, Mark. Councillor Gregg, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader, and thank you, Chris. You actually the points I was going to make. The entire staff of Conway, right the way across every service, has been phenomenal in the last 12 months in the circumstances. But as Chris noted on our frontline staff, we were one in the first lockdown. We were one of only 2 counties in the entire UK who kept our curbside recycling at a normal rate, and I think that's quite phenomenal. And that's not only just down to the staff, because they were supported from staff from other services when the numbers fell low. And I think working between all the various services and the way they've pulled together to help us achieve what we have, which is noted in this report, is absolutely fantastic. I wanted to know all of them.
Yeah, fully deserved. Yeah, thank you, Greg. Councillor Gromway.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. And I think Greg and other members of the Cabinet have already commented on the hard work of the different teams that have been throwing themselves into the adapting their services in the face of COVID. And I was just going to mention the open spaces teams, the recycling teams, the hard work they continue to, these frontline staff that have seriously stepped up to the mark and continued vital services for our residents. Also the business team that have been so supportive of all our businesses with the grants funding, and of course Greg. Charlie will know only too well of the NNDR team and the council team that have been pumping money out there. As soon as we've received it from government, we made sure that they've gone through the different criteria, and they've worked tirelessly to come together to support our communities and our business sector. So it's a big thank you for me to all the services. Thank you, Leader.
Yeah, thank you very much, Cromwell. And Councillor Charlie.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. So I guess on a similar theme, it's an excellent report. And as Chris said, we certainly haven't stood still. Certainly from my portfolio point of view, from the housing side with homelessness, prior to the pandemic, we were only offering to priority need. It was very select who we could help. Welsh Government, to be fair, said because of the pandemic, we will give everybody, there was no priority needs. So that's seen a 400 to 500% increase in the number of cases the team has dealt with. We were well resourced from Welsh Government, but actually they had to physically put the man hours in to do that. So it's an outstanding effort. There are no street homeless in Conway. That's something we should all be proud of, but they're not just being dumped in B&Bs. We've got some really innovative schemes where we're working really hard with these people to put them back on their feet, get them back into employment so they can, rebuild their lives. So really, really proud of the work they've done. The regulatory side is all public health, public licensing. They've given guidance, that they've implemented the rules. They've helped our businesses to try and comply, to keep them safe. Even today in Abergele, there's trading standards are going around making sure shops are, if they need help or assistance or guidance or advice, they're doing it. Our businesses have been brilliant. There's been very, very few cases where we've had to do enforcement, but also when that's necessary, that they've done that. And it's quite a difficult role, front-facing role, dealing with people who are losing their businesses, perhaps, and really struggling, but they've done that tirelessly. And as Gromwell touched on, the business team, 60, 70 million pounds of grants have gone out, but I really want to reassure people that they were all checked and audited and signed off. There wasn't just we'll just pay anybody who asks us. They put a huge amount of work into that. So we're confident that when the day comes and there's an audit and we go through all those grants and see why they've been paid, that we as Conway can be really confident that we've done the right thing with that. So they work fast, but they also work really, really cleverly. And that was joint work with our IT team. We set up really good application forms and stuff. So a fantastic example, I think, of the whole of Conway pulling together as a team and producing some really exemplary results.
Great. Thank you, Charlie. Ewan, you want to come in?
Thanks, Leader. As I mentioned at Finance and Resources Scrutiny, when this report came there, one of my very few changes to the draft was to change the overall assessment of it from being good to being very good, and it's nice and it's quite right to hear Cabinet endorse that in many ways. But in fairness, Cabinet, I'd also like to thank you for playing your part. And Charlie said this has been a collective effort on behalf of the whole council, and you as a collective cabinet and as individual cabinet members have played your part, as have other members. It really has been a coming together of people who really care about Conway. So I wouldn't want to miss this opportunity to thank you, Leader and Cabinet.
Thank you, Ewan. just my own. Actually, I'll bring Councillor Gronwy in first, and then I'll have some personal thoughts. Gronwy.
Yeah, just the point that I had was, and Johan mentioned all the hard work of everybody, but I'd like to mention the hard work of the senior management team. Not only have the capital services going in Conway, but they've also attended meetings with different partners from the Welsh Assembly and all cross sections of the different people involved, from the emergency services, the response teams. So all the hard work the senior management team have done as well. Fantastic. Of course, we can't forget the work that Andrew's done in ensuring that we try and reclaim as much of the money that we've spent as possible. So great, thank you.
Yeah, good. Thank you, Gronwy. I think one of the completely support all the thanks and that stuff. Excellent stuff. I think the other thing that I'm really pleased with what's in front of us today is the focus around looking to achieve the objectives of the corporate plan. So when I became the leader, one of the things I was really clear about was making sure that the corporate plan, which is something agreed by all of council, is the thing which is directing our action and our efforts. And I think I would have been concerned if there's a report here today which was very light on the items that we had set out in terms of our objectives. And I think it shows that in the midst of chaos at times, when a pandemic is kicking off, actually the continued focus on the areas that need that focus has happened, whilst also serving the needs of our community in a pandemic. So I think that's just given me some assurances. Actually, our structures, processes, systems, all that stuff, which isn't necessarily all that exciting at times, those things are in place which allow us to continue to focus on the thing which our members of this council had chosen to be a focus of this council term. So I'm just pleased with that. Not the most exciting thing to be pleased about, but I think it just gives some assurances actually that we're focusing the right sort of areas. So that's the reflection from me there. And I'm sure all the good items that are in here will also be shared in the press and the public, as the times where we get things wrong are as well. More than happy to comment on the positive things in here, as well as the times we get things wrong. Councillor Chris, did you want to say anything further as we wrap things up?
No, I think my fellow cabinet members have helped me out there a lot. Thank you very much. It's just the recommendation that the 2020-21 mid-year corporate performance report is approved. I move that.
Okay, great. Well, I'm going to second that if somebody else hasn't already. Sorry, I've done it. And all in favour then, please. Excellent stuff. Good, thank you very much. Okay, so let's move on to the next item on the agenda. Thank you, Chris, for presenting that, and certainly to Fran for pulling it all together. I'm sure it's not like herding cats at all, Fran, but I kind of imagine that happening. Okay, so agenda item 11 is the exempt items for us to consider passing a resolution under the provision of section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972. The items 12.1 and 12.2 are we exclude the press and public from those items, and the reasons why are detailed in the report. Would somebody like to propose that we do that? Councillor Charlie, seconded. Councillor Gregg, all in favour, please. Thank you very much. I'll just pause for one moment.